All right, let's get started here. At the beginning of this presentation, I just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a lot to cover in this next hour. Our presentation is broken up into 3 distinct sections, and I will be pausing at the end of each section to take any questions from those in attendance. There also on your screen, you should see a Q&A option. So if you have any questions, one of my coworkers is going to be monitoring that Q&A box, and he should be able to address any questions you have throughout the presentation in more ad hoc fashion. So feel free to use the Q&A box, or at the end of each section when I ask for questions, if you want to ask a question, then that's a good time to do it there. All right. Let's get started. Thanks for joining our Solar 101. This is our first in Indiana. My name is Andrea. I'm the Indiana Program Specialist. I help support our Indiana Program Director, Zach Schultz, and our Indiana programming. Today, during this info session, we're going to be covering a few different topics. We're going to try and cover how the basics of solar technology and how solar works. We're also going to cover our solar co-op process. We have a couple co-ops that are open to signups in Indiana, particularly in Indianapolis, and another one recently opened in Hamilton County. And finally, we're going to go over the economics of solar, which includes solar financing, incentives, and investment potential for solar energy. So let's get going here. First, we're going to cover a little bit about who Solar Neighbors is. We're a nonprofit organization. We focus on gathering people together to create a community of people who are interested in helping us build a new energy system focused on rooftop solar energy. We have started, our story started back in 2007 with our founder, Anya Schoolman's son. He came home one day from school and said that he was really interested in exploring solar energy, that there has to be more that they can do to take part in this renewable energy movement. So Anya told her son, okay, let's look into it. They realized that it was a really obscure process, and she said, if we're going to go solar, then we're going to help our whole neighborhood go solar. And so her son went out and flyered the whole neighborhood, got a bunch of people to sign up as a group who wanted to go solar together, and they ended up taking 50 people solar in that first group, and that was kind of the beginning of our solar co-op process and of Solar United Neighbors as an organization. And since 2007, we've helped organize over 200 co-ops across the United States. We have helped over 3,700 homes and businesses go solar, and have installed over 30 megawatts of solar capacity. So through this process, we have been able to build and improve on our solar co-ops and helping people go solar. Moving forward, this just is a slide to show that we are now in 13 states, our newer states being Arizona and Colorado. Indiana even was recently launched this year, so we're excited to be able to come into this state. And our program director, Zach, is very enthusiastic about the solar potential there. As part of our Indiana program, we have partnered very closely with our Solarize Indiana campaign. Solarize Indiana is also, it's a group of volunteers in Indiana, and they have been around since 2017 and really been influential facilitators of solar in Indiana, and have really helped homeowners across the state go solar. So we're excited to have been able to partner with them, and they're really instrumental in our ability to expand in Indiana. To make solar a little bit more obviously accessible in Indiana, we have this slide in here to show the solar power potential in Indiana compared to that of a state like Germany or a country like Germany, which has invested a lot of resources in going solar. So you can see that Indiana has more solar power potential than Germany, and no reason not to go solar in Indiana because the sun just isn't strong enough. We also wanted to show how solar consumers have increased in Indiana from 2010 to current day. These are the amount of solar systems that have been logged in Indiana. So you can see that it's an increasingly popular investment for homeowners in Indiana. Here, I'm just going to talk real quickly about the different ways that we can help you go solar. The first one, co-op membership, is what I'm going to focus on more later in this presentation. As a co-op member, like if you were to join the Indianapolis or Hamilton County solar co-ops, we help you go solar as a group. And through this process, we help connect you with a vetted installer, which I will talk about later. And you have access to Zach and myself and our solar team throughout the entire process. The other options, should you be outside of these two co-op territories, is to join as an individual member. It's an $85 membership, and that gives you access to our solar help desk. Our solar help desk specialists will help you review bids and help you collect bids from installers. They will look over those bids and help compare them more apples to apples and make sure that you're asking the right questions to ensure that you are receiving a fair proposal and signing a contract that you are comfortable with, and helping you navigate that whole process on a more individual basis. So let's get into the bulk of the presentation. Today, we're going to start with solar technology and talk about what it means to have a solar system on your home or business. Then we are going to talk about how our solar co-op process works and give you more insights into who Solar United Neighbors is. And finally, we're going to talk about solar economics in Indiana more specifically. All right, starting with solar technology. So for these groups, we focus more on solar photovoltaic type technologies. This means that it's going to it's going to use the sunlight to generate electricity, which will power your home. Other people have heard of solar thermal, which uses hot water to heat pools and things like that. Our co-ops focus mainly on photovoltaic. Here's a schematic basically of how solar systems work generally. We're going to dig into each individual component in a minute here, but overall, if you were to look at a solar system, you'd see number one, the panels on the roof collecting sunlight and generating electricity. That electricity flows from the panels and into an inverter to convert the electricity into a format that is going to be able to be consumed by the appliances in your home. And then, so it'll connect through your electric panel and go into power your home. And should your panels be producing more electricity than your home is consuming, then it'll go through your electric meter and out onto the grid to power your neighbors' homes or the business next door. So let's start here. First, on important terminology for solar, things to understand and terms that you're going to hear a lot of as you go through the process and work with an installer to get your system installed. So let's start by breaking into what a kilowatt is. A kilowatt is a unit of power or potential power. They're used to describe essentially how much power potential a solar panel might have. So in this example, let's say each panel has a power rating of 300 watts. And you put 10 panels together to create a 3,000 watt solar array or a 3 kilowatt solar system. And that's kind of how solar power works. In kilowatt hours, it's a unit of energy or production, essentially, that your system generates. So this is kind of what you will see on your electricity bills, how much energy your house consumed, and also is how much energy your solar system has produced. This breaks into what a solar panel is more specifically. You can see that in the middle of all those layers, you have your solar cells. Those are the ones, solar silicon cells are what generate the electricity. When the sunlight hits the surface of those, it excites some electrons, and that is where the electric flow is created, which will generate the electricity for your home. It's encased in plexiglass, very, very thick, all pretty much created to withstand your typical weather, wear and tear, hail, wind, rain, snow, all of that is built into these layers to make sure that the solar system is equipped to handle that type of weather. And then each individual panel will be racked together and connected into a solar array to generate enough capacity to cover your electric demand. As I talked about a little bit before in that first slide, the electricity is created in direct current power by the solar system. And your home consumes electricity in alternating current electric form. So the solar panels electricity needs to be converted from DC form to AC form, and that happens at inverter level. There are 3 different types of inverters that installers consider when designing solar systems. The first is just a central string inverter, where all the power is collected from all the solar panels and converted to AC electricity in one spot. This is very typical for an array that has full sunlight and has no issues with shading and things like that. That's typically the inverter that installers will go with. On the other side of the spectrum, there's microinverters. Microinverters convert the electricity at panel level. So at each individual panel, that electric power will be converted directly. This is more useful for more shading potential. If a tree kind of hits a corner of your solar system during the day with some shade, then this converting electricity at the panel level will prevent this from impacting the power output of the rest of your array. And then the middle one we have here is a string inverter with DC optimizers. Is kind of the best of both worlds. It'll optimize a certain portion of your system that may or may not be shaded throughout the day. From there, once it's converted to alternating current, the electricity will flow into connect on your electric panel. Typically, this is a very simple and easy connection into your panel. Sometimes homes need electric system upgrades if they don't have the capacity to take in another connect, but typically you see that that's not a big problem for homeowners to just connect the solar array into their house's electric system. At the top of the roof where you connect your solar array, there's a bunch of different methods on how to connect the solar system to your roof. This here indicates for an asphalt shingle array, you can see that the racking is connected to your roof. It'll be drilled into the rafters of the roof and then flashed properly. So those black metal squares that you see are kind of used to replicate what a shingle would do in that spot, and it helps flush the water around that connection and essentially waterproof it to make sure that there's no leaking that's caused by the solar system. They also put in sealant, and all installers that we work with provide a warranty for roof penetrations, which would cover this type of work. Here are other types of ways that racking can be, or that solar systems can be attached to your roof. So whether your roof is slate or flat or metal, there's typically a way in which installers can connect the system to your roof safely. There's the flashing, as I've talked about before. Ballasting is for flat roofs, where if your roof has the ability to handle some weight, it'll just be weighted onto your roof. And there are a few other examples there. Here's an example of a standing seam metal roof where they just clamp on to the standing seams and there's no roof penetration. It's a very easy installation. And finally, if your roof isn't viable for solar and you have enough space in your yard or have a lot of land, then a ground mounted system is also a good option. For ground mount systems, they can be ideal for making sure the array is oriented and angled at the right way to maximize your power potential from that solar system. At this point, a lot of people typically ask what makes a good roof for solar, what will installers look at, and what do we look at? So we do say, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, we look for a roof space that faces generally south. It can face due east and due west, and then south from there. Installers typically don't recommend installing on a north-facing roof because the solar system won't get any direct sunlight and therefore will be relatively inefficient. Another thing we look at is shading. Shading's definitely not good for a solar system, and we'll only look at spots on the roof that don't have shading potential. And then we also look for at least 200 square feet of roof space for which a solar system can be placed on. Most installers have minimum system sizes that they will install for a residential system, which is around 2 kilowatt to 3 kilowatt solar system. So with that minimum qualification comes with, they will only install on a roof that has at least 200 square feet or larger roof space available for a solar system. Also, you want to consider your roof age. If you're going to be replacing your roof within the next 5 to 10 years, we'd recommend looking into replacing the roof before getting the solar system installed, because getting those panels removed and put back on will have an added cost to your roof replacement process. Another thing people ask about is what happens if the power goes out. For safety measures, the solar system will automatically shut down and be cut off. That means that it won't be generating electricity to be used by your home. This is to prevent backfeeding onto the grid so that the power lines around your home don't become live when they shouldn't and cause a safety issue for workers on the lines trying to get the power back on. So if the power is out, your solar system is out as well, unless you have a battery backup system, which will be set up to keep your house online while the grid is down. So if you want to have that access to that power, then you'll need to install a battery storage system in order to do so. This is a little bit more information on battery backup. In Indiana, homeowners might be interested in battery backup if they experience frequent and extended utility outages, if there are home loads that must be powered at all times, like medical equipment, well pumps and such, and also just in general for emergency and disaster preparedness. At the moment, battery backup systems are relatively expensive, so it doesn't really help you see more savings on your solar system investment, but that could change in the future. And if you want to learn more about battery, we have a whole battery storage guide for homeowners that you can download off our website down there in the lower right corner at solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. So this just we're going to bring it all back up to the system level viewpoint. We've talked about the solar panels, how they connect into your home, and the electricity is converted to alternating current energy. And then if you're all out at work and school during the day and your home is producing more power than it's consuming, then that power is pushed back out onto the electric grid to be consumed by your neighbors and by local businesses. So a lot of homeowners ask, well, what happens to this electricity? And do I get compensated for this electricity that goes back out to the grid? The answer is yes, and this comes in the form of net metering. So for every 1 kilowatt hour that you produce back out onto the grid, your utility will manage those and credit them to your bill moving forward. So at the end of a billing period on your electric utility bill, you'll see the amount of electricity that you consumed versus, so at night when your solar system's not producing any energy, you'll be pulling electricity from the grid. So that will be monitored, and so they'll take all the amount of electricity that you use from the grid and subtract the electricity that you put back onto the grid, which will net into your monthly bill. If you have any excess generation, then it will be rolled forward into the consequent months indefinitely. So that's how that works. In Indiana, though, we do want to say or highlight that there was a law passed in 2017 that mandated that everyone who installs solar systems after 2022 will not receive net metering. So that's to say, if you're interested in going solar and you want to be grandfathered into net metering, then the system needs to be installed before July 1st, 2022. And you'll receive full retail net metering until 2032. Systems installed after 2022 will not receive net metering. And then for all those who do have net metering until 2032, there's going to be, you'll still get some net metering afterwards, but the rate hasn't been fully fleshed out yet, but we expect it to be, and they've indicated that it'll be at more of a marginal price, about a third of what you get at retail rate, plus about 25%, but those numbers haven't been released yet. Just to go through real quick, some other questions people have. So for warranties, there are 3 different types of warranties that we have people look for on their solar contracts. One is product warranties. So you get a product warranty on your panels for about 10 to 20 years, depending on the panel and manufacturer. So that's if there's a fault and your panel stops producing power, then they will replace it. There's also a product warranty on inverters. And again, so if the inverter were to malfunction, then they will come and replace the inverter under that warranty. There's also on your panels a production warranty. The production warranty guarantees your panel will output a certain percentage of its original efficiency 25 years out. So that's usually down to from 80 to 90% of its original production rate. And the last warranty people will look for is the installer's installation warranty. That's on the work that they do on your roof. That should cover roof penetrations, and those last anywhere from 3 to 10 years, depending on the installer. And it should be at least within the period where you would notice if there are any issues on their workmanship. Homeowners ask if it'll impact their insurance. We typically don't see it impact homeowners insurance, but we do recommend you reach out to your provider and ask. And maintenance-wise, solar systems have little to no moving parts, and maintenance is super low. The rain and snow and all that kind of stuff typically keep panels clean so that they're continuing to output enough at their max efficiency. Sometimes installers will offer that they come back and do a cleaning for you and run a system check, but that's pretty much the extent of what system maintenance requires. As I covered before, solar panels are produced to withstand hail, rain, snow, storms. Snow will even melt off your panels quicker than it melts off the rest of your roof. So we definitely don't recommend that you go up on your roof and try and shovel the snow off. It's for safety reasons. And how long systems last? They're typically warranted out to 25 years, as we talked about in the warranties, but they will last much longer than that and continue to produce electricity. They don't just stop working at the end of 25 years. HOAs can pose they can't prevent you from going solar, but they can they can influence some power over how your system is designed, where it can be placed, how it looks, what they can see. We have a whole guide online on how to work with your HOA to get your solar system permitted. And also, please always feel free to reach out if you have any specific questions about HOAs and what we can do to help you get your solar system permitted there. Same type of deal with historic districts. There might be some extra permitting and some specific setback requirements and things like that that you have to incorporate into your system designs. So that's the end of our first section. I think that some questions had come throughout the first section, but I'm going to see if there's any that we need to address. Does anyone have any questions for me at this time? Okay, awesome. I will move on then. All right, so for this section, we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about how our solar co-ops work. These solar co-ops are what I had talked about in the beginning and how we help people go solar as a group. Through this, we see that we can help you get good value on your installation through a bulk purchasing type theory. You'll get our support throughout the process. Myself, our Indiana program director, Zach, and the rest of our team will be available to answer any questions you might have. If you go solar as a group, you really get to connect with other people in your community who are interested in going solar and become more part of this solar movement. So when I say solar movement, I think of us helping to advocate on your behalf. So for that net metering policy in Indiana and how it ends after 2022, we will be working really hard to make sure that you're fairly compensated for your solar. It was only passed in 2017, so it can always change, and we'll be working to make sure that that is changed moving forward. So let's go through the process real quick. So we have two co-ops open currently, one in Indianapolis and one in Hamilton County. The first part of any co-op is for the participants to learn about the co-op, to attend an info session like you are now, to figure out what it means to go solar, and hopefully sign up if they're interested. Signing up for a co-op is free. There's no commitment for you to go solar. It's just part of your indication that you're interested in solar and want to learn more about the process and potentially want to go solar through our co-op. When you sign up for the group, what we do on our end is I take a look at your roof and assess it for those components that we talked about earlier, the south facing, at least 200 square feet of unshaded roof space. And an installer in the installation process will work with you to do more of a structural review of your roof and determine its ability to host a solar array. So as we get people to sign up, we're trying to grow this group to reach about 20 to 30 participants to reach sort of a capacity where we think we could get competitive bids from installers in the area. So once we get about 30 participants, we'll issue a request for proposals from our list of installers. Any installer, it's a public RFP, so any installer interested in bidding and participating in the co-op can do so. They have about 2 weeks to submit their bids, and we ask 25 to 26 questions on this bid. So I, as the headquarters staff, will take these bids, digest them, review them for completeness, put them into a digestible spreadsheet, and then we ask for any member of the co-op to volunteer to participate in reviewing these bids and selecting the installer at a selection committee meeting. So we, as a solar nonprofit, remain installer neutral, and the entire selection is to the discretion of the selection committee. We will be there to help guide the members through the bids and to answer any technical or specific questions they might have. If we have past experience with the installer, then we'll insert any reviews or anecdotes that seem necessary to help inform the final decision. After the installer is selected, they will start reaching out to each member individually to provide them a proposal that works for their home specifically. Those proposals will be catered to fit your economic needs, how much electricity or what your electric demands are, and how much roof space you have. So it's all really catered to your specific installation needs. We do set up an sign-up deadline, which is about 2 months after the installer has been selected. And so we try to get as many people to join and participate in this group up until that deadline. And then everyone will start working with and going solar with the installer. So up to the point of your receiving that contract from the installer, none of this has been binding. The only contractually binding portion of it is signing that contract with the installer. At that point, Solar United Neighbors gets a $600 fee for every contract signed, which helps fund our efforts, our advocacy efforts within the state, and continue to work to secure your investment in solar. So, and we also check in with the installer weekly to make sure the co-op is moving forward and to raise any questions or issues members have come to us with. So we're trying to continue to stay involved in it and make sure that the process is as transparent and easy and familiar as possible for the members of the co-op. And then once everyone gets their system installed, we'll have a big party to celebrate the expansion of solar in Indiana and specifically in your area of Indiana. This slide, we're just reiterating who gets to pick the installer. It'll be the co-op members. And when you sign up for the co-op, if the installer has not been selected yet, it'll ask you, the sign-up form will ask you what's important to you, what's important that the installer has, whether they have most competitive pricing, that they have the best quality equipment, that they have strong warranties, a lot of experience, or that they're local. All of that information that we gather from people who have signed up for the group, we put into a sheet so that the selection committee can consider what's important for every member of the group and feel confident in the decision they're making on behalf of the rest of the co-op members. All right, so that's the end of our co-op portion, explanation portion of this presentation. Does anyone have any questions at this time? I saw a few come through.
We did have somebody who maybe wanted to share their experience about historic preservation review in Indianapolis.
Okay.
Andy, did you want to share that experience, or just type some information into the chat area? I'll unmute you if you'd like to share verbally.
Yeah, sorry, I missed exactly what you're asking me to share. I offered a couple different things.
Oh, you had offered to talk about your the experience with the historic preservation review in Indianapolis.
Sure. Let me just briefly mention how it worked. So I live in one of the conservation areas in Indianapolis, and because of that, changes to the exterior of my home are only allowed if I get a certificate of appropriateness from the Indiana Historic Preservation Commission. So if you were in one of those areas, then you might have to go to the IHPC and find out what their requirements are. And then once you submit an application to them, they will review it to find out whether or not they think that it needs a full review of the entire IHPC, or it can just be handled in a simple hearing. And in my case, it went in under a simple hearing. So I just had to show up and say, hey, I'm doing X. And they said, that seems fine. And I got the certificate of appropriateness. I will mention that as part of that, I did have to send out letters to about 40 different people who had registered to want to know about these types of changes. So it was a bit of busy work and sending things through the postal mail. But in the end, it wasn't actually hard.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you sharing that. Anything else you want to share about your experience with solar that might be helpful for the group?
I do think it's important to make sure that the installers are actually getting the permits that they're supposed to get, which was something I ran into. There seemed to be some disagreement about which permits were required, but we got that sorted out.
Great, that's great feedback. Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you sharing your experience.
Thank you, Andy. All right. Any other questions, or should I move on to the solar economics portion?
I don't see any other ones listed.
I will move on to solar economics. So, solar itself is no longer a boutique item for homeowners to invest in, although that's not to say that the process of going solar isn't somewhat daunting and maybe hard to tackle. That's what we're here for, is to help people navigate that process. But as far as costs, they have come down dramatically since solar panels were first invented in the 1970s. And today we continue to see those costs decrease. So it's becoming increasingly affordable and increasingly a strong investment for homeowners to make. You're also kind of hedging your bets against future electricity rises in electricity rates. So here you'll see the historic price changes in Duke and IPL, and just in general an increasing trend. So if you install solar, then you are offsetting your consumption of that increasingly expensive electricity. So that's important to keep in mind. Moving forward, we talked about how solar panels themselves are becoming increasingly more affordable. In this schematic, you'll see a breakdown of the cost of a turnkey solar system, which includes soft costs or overhead costs. An installer might have labor for installing your solar system, and also the system components. So over the past, or from 2010 to 2017, you'll see that the amount of that overall cost that a system is, the system components have taken up less and less and less of that overall cost. So has labor, but the overhead or soft costs, which are paying for marketing, sales techniques, collecting leads, is taking up an increasingly amount of that overall system cost. And we see our co-ops as a way to help installers cut down on that overhead, as we are bringing to them a big group of qualified, interested, and educated leads. They can cut down on the amount that they need to spend in order to market to and find those leads in a specific area. So this kind of helps show our value add and how bulk purchasing idea kind of plays out into what most of a solar system's cost is. Here you'll see a general pricing breakdown of how much a solar system might cost in Indiana. So our average co-op pricing is about $2.56 per watt. And we have two system sizes here, a 4 kilowatt array and an 8 kilowatt array. So focusing on the 4 kilowatt array, so that's 4,000 watts. So 4,000 times $2.56 is $10,240 baseline for your solar system. Incorporating the federal tax credit, which is a federal incentive for solar, that is actually, you get 30% of the total system costs in a tax credit to your federal taxes. So you have to have enough tax appetite to take advantage of this. And this 30% tax credit is actually going to step down to 26% at the end of this year, which I'll talk about more in, I think, the following slide. So taking in that 30% tax credit, your net cost is about $7,200. Then we'll project out some estimated electricity savings. I'm going to skip the solar renewable energy credit section here for a minute. You'll see that we've only been able to project electricity savings out to 2032 from now until then, because that is the amount of time that a homeowner in Indiana will be able to take advantage of full retail net metering. At the end of 2032, the net metering is scheduled to phase out or down to a different compensation rate that has yet to be determined. So we have projected out to what we can confidently estimate. So you'll see that by the end of net metering, you'll be in the green, positive a couple $100, and your system will have been paid off. So you should from then onward be seeing savings, collective savings for the rest of your system's life. The reason we have question marks under the solar renewable energy credits is because Indiana in itself doesn't have a market for these. Solar renewable energy credits are generated by legislation that mandates solar in the utilities electric mix, essentially. In the past, Indiana homeowners have been able to sell their credits, the green credits of the solar energy that their system generates into the Ohio market. But recently a law has passed that might be phasing out the Ohio's solar renewable energy credit markets. So moving forward, there might not be a market for these, and they're valued at about $4 to $8 a credit. Lately, and a 4 kilowatt system will generate about 5 credits a year. So it's not a super robust market in Indiana yet, but maybe someday we can pass legislation that mandates a solar carve out for utilities in Indiana and creates a similar market there. All right, so this slide digs into the federal tax credits. So this is what I talked about as the federal incentive here on this slide, which will take 30% of your system costs out essentially and apply it to your federal taxes. The tax credit is set to step down at the end of this year. So for any systems that are not installed by December 31st, then they'll have to be applied for the 26% federal tax credit. And here you can see that's for a $2.75 watt system at a total of about $19,000. That changes your tax credit from $5,775 to $5,005. So it takes out about $770 worth of tax credit. And then in the following year, in 2021, it's going to step down again to 22%. And then finally, it completely phases out in 2022. So there are different ways that you can pay for your solar system. If upfront cash isn't an option, it can be a really big upfront cost for people. There's certainly loans out there that homeowners can take advantage of to help them go solar. Home equity is the cheapest cash and like the best, one of the more affordable loans out there, but there are a lot of banks that are coming up with good solar loan formats, and installers are equipped to help you navigate that process as well. Okay, so that is the end of our economics section. I want to see if there's any outstanding questions that people need to have answered. Please feel free to put them in the question box or raise a hand and we can unmute you. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? Are we good? Looks like we're good for now. I see that Andy made a note that this year's Ohio's market has been up to $20 to $25. We'll see how that new they recently phased out their solar mandate as of yesterday, so it might collapse the solar renewable energy credit market. So that's something to keep your eye on moving forward, and we'll certainly be keeping our eye on it as well. All right, so moving on, seeing no new questions. What's next? So for those of you who are in one of our co-op territories, that would be Indianapolis or Hamilton County, you can go to that webpage, SolarizeIndiana.org/co-ops/Indiana, and click to sign up for whichever one you live in, area you live in. If you don't live in a co-op territory and want to explore membership, I encourage you to do so. If you just go to our base homepage, SolarUnitedNeighbors.org, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a membership button that'll guide you through the different levels of membership. Tell your friends and neighbors about the co-op, help grow it. Hamilton County is a new co-op, recently launched. We have a bunch of in-person information sessions coming up later in August that you or your neighbors are welcome to attend. Once that co-op reaches capacity, we'll be able to issue requests for proposals. And the Indianapolis Solar Co-op has had an installer selected, so those in that area will, we have already selected an installer, and the deadline, I believe, is coming up on August 8th here. And other than that, please feel free to reach out to us. Our shared inbox, both Zach and I manage it, is IN, like Indiana team, at SolarUnitedNeighbors.org, or you can give us a call at 202-888-3601. So that's the ways we're reachable. Does anyone have any final questions for us here? Okay. Okay, so we have a question here from John about how to keep critters from nesting among the panels. So to address that question first, if you have squirrel issues on your roof or critter issues from overhanging trees or somehow, that's definitely something to talk to your installer about. They have products out there called squirrel guards, and it's just a gate that they put up along the edges of the panels that will prevent them from nesting under there and chewing on any wires and things like that. The second half of your question there is, do you need to worry about wind, gust / lift? You do not need to worry about that. Local permitting guidelines and requirements will review the solar system's engineering and structural review. Will make sure that it's able to withstand wind gusts, the maximum gusts that you would see in Indiana. So we usually don't see any issues with solar systems not being able to withstand high wind. Couple more questions. Who is the selected installer for Indianapolis? From Joel, the selected installer is Rectify Solar. So they have been working with co-op participants. They're a local Indianapolis installer. Can you tell us more about the Rural Energy Grant?
I can handle that. Okay. Just going back to the installer, though, when folks join the group, this is Corey, by the way. I should have introduced myself. I took work in the office. The installer, when folks join the group, you'll get an explanation of the offerings of what was in the package that the installer put together. So as part of that qualification process that Andrea talked about, when you look at your all those details, so you can look at them for IN@SolarUnitedNeighbors.org. We're available to help. Andrea and Zach man that staff that email. And question about the Rural Energy Grant. So there is a USDA-based grant that is for rural businesses, not just farms, but any place that's in a designated rural area. That there is a grant for those projects. It is a competitive grant that requires an application process. If you're looking for more information on that online, you can just search on USDA or renewable energy the grant, what their acronym is, but it's also called REAP, R-E-A-P. Or if you can't find information, feel free to email us directly at INteam@SolarUnitedNeighbors.org. We'll help you find that info and track that down for you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Again, please feel free to reach out at the phone number we provided or the INteam@SolarUnitedNeighbors.org. Thanks for joining today, and hope to hear from you all in the future. We should be sending out a recording of this in the next day or two here. So if you missed the beginning, don't worry. You will also get that information from us. All right, have a good day.